Welcome to the Further Light Podcast, presented by Wisconsin Freemasonry, helping you accomplish your Masonic goals through education and more light. And now, I present to you Brother Napoleon Sneed Janzak. Sometimes you got to go back to the basics, right back to the drawing board. You just got to start over and really think about things in a different way. This is Brother Napoleon Sneed Janzak, and today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Back to the basics, Masonic education. A few weeks ago, we had a symposium where myself, Worshipful Brother Pat Choka, Worshipful Brother Chris Ludke, and Worshipful Brother Jeff Woosley did a symposium, and we talked about that very subject. And on the agenda, we had a few items that we wanted to touch with regard to going back to the basics. And we started with the origins, organization, and regularity. And then we went into the ritual, misconceptions, and how to present or offer Masonic education. I just want to state that within those topics, there was a general consensus on some of it, particularly with how the importance of each of those particular topics were and how much they should emphasize on each of those different items. So one thing is we don't want to get hung up too much on the origins so much because they predate, 1717. And where we came from is only significant to the point of teaching about the ancient tools and the moral lessons that followed. Now, when that happened is obscure and it's rooted in mystery somewhere, so we don't really know exactly how it all started, although we do have some really good ideas about that. But we do know that it predates 1717. And now, the idea behind the lessons of those working tools and things of that old ancient time, the fact of it is it relevant to your outcomes, or does it have a direct correlation to what it is you're trying to achieve when it comes to Masonic education? And the general consensus amongst us was simply, it doesn't necessarily matter to a whole certain degree how it started, more so, or even when it started, but more so how you chose to use it in your life today or making it more relevant to today. And the basic premises that we are aware of even before you become a Mason are, obviously the entered apprentice or the apprentice, the journeyman or fellowcraft, and of course the master. And you should know this already upon entering the fraternity at its basic levels. Now, I just want to clarify that every experience is subject to interpretation, and it's not necessarily factual in that way, other than what we, can determine through dates and names. And yes, there is some archaeological evidence of some sort, but most of that stuff is obscure, and it's left to the interpretation of the person that had given the ideals, such as like an Albert Mackey or something to that effect. That was their particular interpretation at their time. So I want to be really clear on that a lot of times in Masonry, we get into these rabbit holes of going down places that may or may not be factual, but to understand that every one of us has a perspective. And just like this presentation, it's just simply my particular interpretation of what I thought about these ideas. So again, even though there's a basic idea of what and where the lessons came from, it predates any Grand Lodge and it's shrouded in deep mystery. So no one can tell you exactly how we got here, only that we are here. And most of this took place, during the Age of Enlightenment. And that's even a bit messy in that at that time, people were seeking esoteric magic and spiritualism and various religious type ideals at that time. Masonry saw a place of prolific degree writing, and the appendant bodies started to emerge shortly after the Grand Lodges were established, and many offshoot fraternal organizations at that. And they all had these ideas of finding spirituality and other alchemical style growth within themselves. So there was a lot of that happening in very many different ways. Now we do know of some of these things that may have been part of the origins, and part of it is the old charges or the documents from the medieval period that outline the moral guidelines, historical accounts, and rules for the craft of the stonemasons in those particular times. So they had to live by some sort of code. And key examples include the Regis manuscript or the Halliwell manuscript of 1390, the Cook manuscript of 1410, and the Edinburgh Register House manuscript of 1696, which served as the foundational text for the transition from operative to speculative masonry. And I would encourage you to go back to episode 93, where we talk about the origins of Freemasonry. As I stated a little while ago, a lot of this stuff was rooted in religious reformation and things like that, and people finding themselves in different ways. And Freemasonry in and of itself was deeply Judeo-Christian in nature. The degrees, etc., were developed out of the moral lessons taught in those early holy scriptures or holy writings in the biblical sense. And this developed into a system of moral lessons divided into parts and organized by multiple people with various or variations in the work. They modeled their work after the orthodox nature of the church, even using terms such as Masonic Catechism. And to give that some context, a catechism is a summary of fundamental religious principles, typically Christian doctrine, presented in an organized format, most often as questions and answers for teaching and memorization. And we use that to this day in Freemasonry. Now, Anderson's Constitutions was published in 1723 by Reverend James Anderson, a Scottish Presbyterian minister, and those were that was the foundational book of modern Freemasonry and what we continue to live by into this new era. But it also contained a lot of traditional history, and the rules and regulations for the fraternity. They varied, here and there. And particularly a key